Oh,
all good, all good.
I'll count. On the count of 3.
Should we?
No,
One,
good, it's fine.
2, and 3.
Hi, we're Interfaith. I am Hannah Rose, and I'm the educational coordinator for Interfaith.
My name's Eve. I'm the media coordinator for Interfaith.
I'm Jacob. I'm the chaplain for Interfaith.
I attend chapel every Wednesday when possible. Yeah.
I do not attend chapel. I have exemption due to some medical issues.
I attend chapel.
I am not a Christian here on campus. I was in the past, so I can understand how some students may enjoy this experience. I personally do not enjoy chapel experience.
It's complicated. I'm gonna be real with you. There have been some specific ones that I've been really enjoying of, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was pretty good. And there's been others that have been troubling, at least for me. But as of chapel, as it is, I'm not I found that I do not like the big, flashy worship experience. It's just not where I find God personally.
I think spiritual formation and attending chapel is good for most students. Some of the Christian faith, I think, the Wednesday experience or the Monday chapel service, I think is really good for their spiritual formation and for their relationship with God. But I do think there are some students on campus that the big flashy church service isn't really their taste of what they're used to. I know Catholics are very used to a liturgical-based service where it's very routine and organized. And I know attending the Wednesday service can be very overwhelming for some people that are not used to that. There's a part of me that is not a fan that it's mandatory for students, and that there's a consequence if you are not attending chapel regularly. But I do see that there's a benefit for the students, all the students on campus, to come together and to be together at least once a week. But overall, for it to be mandatory, I'm not sure I really agree with that.
I think the idea of mandatory chapel, it gives me issues. So I went to a Christian high school, and in that there was a mandatory chapel set up. Unfortunately, it was in the style of hellfire and brimstone sort of sermons, and if you're unfamiliar with what that means, it basically boils down to a preacher going to you and saying, hey, here's all the things why you're a terrible person and you will go to hell. And so that's how it was in high school. So the idea of mandatory chapel is very upsetting, kind of unsettling for me due to past experiences.
Yeah, I would say that one aspect is obviously not everybody on our campus is Christian, right? That's something that we have to be to recognize, and so I think that making something mandatory, forcing them to come, is putting them in a position they may not feel comfortable with, which is fine once in a while, but every week that can get really tiring. And so I think there is that aspect that we need to make sure that we're caring for those students well. But also from the Christian angle, I think it shouldn't have to be mandatory. I think if we're really presenting Jesus and God in those spaces, we should be giving them something that they actually want to come to, and something that actually is going to draw them in, even though they know they don't have to be there. And so that would be my hope, is that we create an experience that's actually putting students first, and what do they need right now, and what would make a space that they would want to be in and want to grow in. Yeah.
I would love to see someone in charge of spiritual formation credit as like a new hire as a full-time employee, not just like a part-time employee or a volunteer position, because at the end of the day, it's an events coordinator. You're coordinating multiple speakers, you're coordinating with students, you're seeing what students need, what students want, and you're trying to fulfill those needs. So having someone whose sole dedication is to have that and listening to students and getting that feedback, I think would be really, really beneficial for the university itself to say, hey, look, we're actually providing for our students and also helping students with spiritual formation and kind of helping that process rather than kind of blanket statement, this will work for everyone.
Yeah, I think something that Lori did really well in the past years was the varieties of speakers she had during chapel services. This school year, we have not had a female speaker on Wednesday service, which is a little disappointing for the student body to only have those male voices. And although there are a variety of male voices with David Hawkins, the guests he brings in, I think we're really missing that female voice that I think Lori strived to have when she was here. I think that would be really beneficial to draw students in as well of, here's this guest speaker that has a really interesting background and they're going to talk and they're going to teach us. And I think that would draw students in and make them excited and want to go to a chapel service that isn't mandatory.
Yeah. And I think another thing that Lori did well in those spaces was definitely that this was an educational opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you step into these spaces, you're learning from somebody. You may walk away and not agree with anything that person had to say,
but you learned something.
Right, you learned something. You got a perspective that you didn't have before. And I think if you're going to do a big chapel event, like there needs to be that educational piece and a trust in the student body and in the professors that like they're going to have those relationships to disciple people well. And sometimes I think that we can see these big events as an opportunity to convert people, and I don't think that that's where that happens.
Yeah.
Or should happen.
We're Interfaith. Thank you for listening. We do a small group on Fridays called Better Together, to where we go into different topics that students have posited, or even some of the topics on Wednesday experience outside of the Christian context. We also do Interfaith Wednesday nights in the Upper Union at 5, to where we explore different ways we can enter interfaith dialogue and practice some of those skills. That is definitely useful when you're an adult in the real world. So, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.